With Invincible being one of the biggest animated series of our generation, people love pitting Viltrumites against various fictional characters, usually from comics or anime, but we seldom see them go up against the likes of other cartoons, despite Invincible thriving in an animated medium. And I think that's kinda whack, because there are plenty of overpowered cartoon characters that could put Nolan, Anissa, or even Conquest in a body bag. So I assembled a list of over 10 characters from the most iconic animated series of all time, alongside some wildcards, to see if they could take on Viltrum's greatest soldiers. Don't think too hard about it, that's my job. Also, for simplicity's sake, I'm putting these characters up against Omni-Man in particular. Next to Mark, he's more or less the face of Invincible, but unlike his son, he can actually win most of his fights without completely destroying his body. Young Danny Fenton was just 14 when his parents built a very strange machine. Electroshock therapy. Danny Phantom has an insane arsenal of abilities that makes him a formidable foe for Omni-Man to deal with. Now, if Omni-Man is able to land a few solid blows on Danny, not holding back whatsoever, it's probably lights out. Luckily, a lot of Danny's ghost powers are great for playing defense. Not only does he have supernatural reflexes, durability, agility, endurance, and speed, he's also able to turn intangible, turn invisible, and he has spectral body manipulation, which makes him quite malleable. Omni-Man would have a hard time even touching Danny because the boy can just phase through all of his attacks and hide in plain sight with his invisibility. But obviously defense is half the battle. Even if he baited Nolan into using all of his stamina and tired him out, he'd still need to be able to finish the job. That's where his more offensive powers come into play. There are two specific abilities that I think gives Danny the edge over Nolan. As recently uncovered in Season 3 of Invincible, Viltrumites have a huge vulnerability to high-frequency noise. It throws off their equilibrium, practically immobilizes them, and could very well be fatal. And Danny's most powerful ability just so happens to be his ghostly wail, a supersonic blast consisting of pure ecto energy that is capable of mass destruction. It was instrumental in Dark Danny's conquest of the future, reducing everything outside of an armored amity part to rubble. Suffice to say, I think the ghostly wail could be the Viltrumite killer, or at the very least incapacitate them, leaving one open for a finishing blow. But there is one major drawback. The ghostly wail tends to be a last resort because it usually drains Danny of all his energy. His evil future counterpart managed to master it, using the ability without physical exhaustion, but considering he's a fusion of two half-ghosts, our Danny would probably have to train a lot harder to pull that off. Although he was able to use it 3 times in a row in the finale, so he very well could be getting a handle on it. Still, it'd only be wise to use it if he's absolutely sure Nolan's been worn down enough for it to work as a finishing blow. It's viable, but it's risky. Thankfully, there's one more trick he may have up his sleeve. Overshadowing, the ability to possess someone at will. Although, if their will is stronger than Danny's, the target can eject him from their body. When it comes to Nolan, I'm not sure if he has an unshakable will after Chicago. He's constantly at war with himself and considered ending his life before. And Danny's the type of guy to plead with his enemies, saying stuff like, "You don't have to do this." So the chances of him sending post-Chicago Nolan to a mental spiral are far from zero. Nolan would still be aggro, but he'd lack an iron will. If Danny has to 4-on-1 on Nolan, I don't think it'd take much to get in his head figuratively or literally, allowing him to hijack his body and, well, have you seen that one tweet about Elon with the Spider-Verse gif? Something like that, but into a black hole. So, could Danny Phantom beat and even kill Omni-Man? Yes. Yes, he can. And with the ghostly wail, I imagine he could take on a lot of the other Viltrumites as well. The Avatar, master of all 4 elements whose capabilities far surpass the average bender. With the synopsis for the new series hitting that the Avatar is way more powerful than we could have ever imagined, they could definitely contend with Omni-Man. But could they actually kill him? Well, that depends on which Avatar he's dealing with. For the sake of this thought experiment, let's look at both Aang and Korra, the 2 avatars we spent plenty of time with over the decades. Right off the bat, you have to have them in the Avatar state. The heightened abilities provided by the Avatar state is their best bet at not only avoiding getting one-shotted into a pile of guts, but matching Nolan's brute strength with their own insane feats. Plus, the Avatar state helps them fly, so kind of a no-brainer. There are so many impressive things that normal benders can do, on top of the godlike godlike acts only the Avatar can pull off that it's hard for me to imagine a Viltrumite wiping the floor with them, at least without a great fight. Seasoned benders can form armor around their bodies with either earth bending or water bending, alongside various weapons. Water benders can heal themselves, although obviously this isn't instantaneous, even if they're the Avatar. Water benders also have blood bending on their side, allowing them to puppet around their opponent's body, render them unconscious, and all sorts of dark shit we haven't seen in an Avatar show yet, like the ability to crush someone's internal organs. That's canon, we made a video about it. I definitely think Viltrumites are just as susceptible to bloodbending as anyone else. Strength be damned! You're fighting the Avatar. Airbenders are already hard to lay a hand on, but with air being everywhere in the atmosphere, they have an advantage fighting in the sky or just about anywhere. The most lethal advantage being the ability to siphon air from the lungs of their targets, suffocating them in the process. Granted, Viltrumites can hold their breath for a long time, so it's possible that Nolan could break free before enough air is taken out of his lungs for him to choke. Now, this is a minor comic spoiler, skip to the timestamp on screen if you don't want to hear it, but apparently Viltrumites have a weakness to intense heat, which leads me to believe that firebending is going to be one of Korra and Aang's most vital elements in this brawl, especially since the Avatar state enables enhanced heat control, which allows them to alter temperatures. There's also combustion bending, which, even if it doesn't blow a Viltrumite into pieces, it could do some damage. All of these elements also allow them to create and weaponize natural disasters. Air vortexes, tsunamis, earthquakes, fire comets, you name it. I haven't even gotten to all of the insane shit various avatars have pulled off. Kyoshi creating Kyoshi Island by splitting the peninsula of Yokoya, Korra tearing open a portal to the spirit world, Zeto lava bending multiple volcanoes, Aang raising the freaking sea level. Hell, the new Avatar series is on the horizon, and allegedly, Korra was able to reshape the entire world into 7 havens. We definitely need some more context on that, but surely that gives Viltrum a run for their money. Suffice to say, I think both Aang and Korra would be capable of ending a Viltrumite like Nolan, but obviously there's a giant elephant in the room that accompanies this whole idea. Aang is against killing. He'll avoid taking lives at any cost, and despite the cruelty of the Viltrum Empire, I don't know if the threat of one is enough to push him past the breaking point, as crazy as that may sound. He might get killed before he gets the chance to defeat one with non-lethal means. Holding back and finding a different resolution would be his downfall. Korra, however, isn't as opposed to taking a life when the lives of innocents are on the line. She already put her uncle in a body bag, and I imagine she'd understand quickly that a fight with a Viltrumite is a fight to the death. So yeah, Aang can't get the job done, Korra can. And it just comes down to morality. Korra haters, please don't hurt me. However, I do wonder if it's possible for Aang or any avatar to nerf a Viltrumite via bloodbending or energy bending. I know Aang is against bloodbending as it's regarded as a dark art, but just stick with me here. Amon was able to use bloodbending to block the chi paths for other benders, reducing them to ordinary humans. And energy bending is a huge enigma that we don't fully understand. But if these are able to block bending, is it possible that they could be used on aliens like Viltrumites to block or at least severely downgrade their abilities? Like, could blood bending or energy bending block their ability to fly? Could it slow down their healing factor? What about their speed or strength? Since we don't know for sure, I'm not going to qualify it, but I still want to throw it out there as something to ponder about. That yeah, maybe Aang could take one down without taking their life. Chew on that.
Made you think.
The Powerpuff Girls are basically mini Viltrumites themselves while having plenty of abilities that outclass them. What can I say? Chemical X is one hell of a drug. They share the ability to fly, and their enhanced strength, speed, stamina, durability, and so on. But they also have heat vision, X-ray vision, night vision. They can generate fire and tornadoes. They're immune to extreme temperatures. They have specialized team attacks. They knocked Mojo into another universe in that Jellystone crossover. They all have their own individual special abilities like Blossom's Ice Breath. Bubbles has an affinity for electricity. Buttercup is just the fastest and strongest. Most importantly, they all have something we established as a silver bullet for fighting Viltrumites: supersonic screams. This honestly isn't even a debate. The girls can keep up with Viltrumites in pretty much every area on top of all their advantages, like the fact there's 3 of them. So I think they can take out Nolan after a pretty good fight. Nolan would have to rely on either leverage, like threatening innocent lives, especially Professor Utonium, or throw the girls off their game by messing with their head and riling them up. If he can have them erratic, unfocused, and ideally split up, he might be able to take them out. But I think it's more likely that Blossom will hit him with her ice breath and have him frozen long enough to move them into space, or at least very high up in the sky, where one of them can spam the supersonic scream, while the other 2 go nuts and put him out of his misery. Now, if we're talking Conquest, I mean, Mark was able to take him down after Eve hit him with her ultimate, and I don't think it's too far-fetched that the girls could whack him with a similar blast and beat him into submission. Presumably, they're a lot more durable than Mark or Eve, so it's going to be harder for Conquest to knock them down. Not to mention, they don't have arms and legs. They have, like, stubs. So good luck karate chopping their limbs and having their bones pop out.
Not gonna happen, Conquest.
Alright, you know I had to bring Ben 10 into this, simply because the Omnitrix has an expansive library of alien DNA, capable of scanning new ones at any moment and allowing Ben to transform into those aliens. So I assume we would all immediately jump to the idea of him scanning Viltrumite DNA and engaging in mortal combat. I also can't help but wonder if he has any aliens already in the Omnitrix who could give even the most powerful Viltrumites a hard time. To ensure we really do Ben justice, I want to hand it off to one of the Ben 10 experts. Someone who's quickly climbing the ranks of action cartoon channels on this platform, Dan Boy Wonder. Take it away, homie.
Ben 10 is looked at as one of the strongest characters in fiction these days, and I strongly believe he has the capability to beat Omni-Man. While Viltrumites are a powerful race and Nolan was one of their top soldiers, Ben would already be well equipped to handle someone like Nolan. Ben's catalog of aliens gives Ben the potential to match up with anyone he goes against. In this case against Nolan, Ben would frequent between his powerhouse aliens like Forearms, Humongousaur, and Waybig, who would be his best option in a battle of strength against Nolan. And if Ben wanted to, he could add to his strength options by of course scanning Nolan's DNA and becoming a Viltrumite himself. While a Viltrumite transformation for Ben, who I would call indestructible, could help Ben in this fight, I don't think that would be his path to victory. There's a chance that Nolan's thousands of years of experience could come back to bite Ben in a Viltrumite versus Viltrumite battle, as I'm sure Nolan has tons of experience fighting his own kind, which we actually do see him do that a lot in the show. So instead, I think Ben should rely on his other and more unique transformations, like a Gravitack, whose gravity abilities could help Ben nullify Nolan's insane movement speeds. You also have Goop, who has been shown to restrain many superpowered individuals, and if Nolan's strength is a problem, Goop would be able to absorb most of his hits. Season 3 of Invincible showcased Viltrumite's weakness to a certain pitch of sound, and this information could be vital to Ben since he has access to Echo, an alien who is made of sound and can manipulate it heavily. Now the pitch is very specific, so Echo would have to figure out exactly what it is, but considering his duplication ability and his mastery of sound, where he can do things like send his sound waves through his cell phone, I believe Ben could find the pitch just through trial and error. You also have to take into account Ben's ability to switch between these forms, which could cause massive problems for Nolan. Now Nolan of course is no slouch. He's held his own against overwhelming odds before, like in season 2 where he and Mark took on 3 other Viltrumites, or in season 1 when he took on the Guardians of the Globe. But in that fight against the Guardians, that did take a lot of energy out of Nolan, showing that there is a chance he can be overwhelmed. Ben's arsenal of aliens could prove too much for Nolan to handle, and that's without me even mentioning some of his more powerful aliens like an Atomics or a Clockwork, or even the Omnitrix's failsafe that prevents Ben from dying. I also feel like I'm forgetting something else that Ben has, like this really powerful alien who's practically a god. He can do shit like, bring back the entire world if it was blown up, but I don't know, maybe I'm tripping, but either way, yeah, Ben solos.
Bill Cipher is a near omnipotent dream demon who can do literally anything. I could lay out all of his powers, or you can just check out this video later, but long story short, he's a reality warper whose only known weakness is a magic barrier tailor-made to fend him off, and a zodiac consisting of 10 specific people that ultimately didn't work because of bickering. The catch, however, is that he doesn't have a physical form in the real world, and without one, he's just stuck in the nightmare realm and the mindscape. So if he found a way to penetrate the world of Invincible with a game gateway that allows him to cross over into the real world, it's GG's. Not a single Viltrumite alive can stop him. If they get too close to him, they're just going to get repelled and petrified or turned into marketable merchandise like a bong. But as long as he's in the mindscape just trying to find a pawn he can make a deal with so he can orchestrate an elaborate way to infiltrate their world, then Nolan's probably fine. At that point, it's just up to Nolan to resist Bill's manipulation, which, depending at the point he's at in his character arc, he might fall for it hook, line, and sinker. If Bill came to him after the Chicago incident and claimed he had a way to give Nolan his old life on Earth back, Nolan might take the bait, only to wind up possessed and used as another vessel. Bill using Nolan as a vessel sounds very messy, and I can only imagine that the death toll would be in the millions. That includes all of the remaining Viltrumites. But if Bill came to him before the Chicago incident, or after Nolan started to reform on Thraxa, I can't see the evil little Dorito getting his way. Nolan's gonna tell him to screw off, cause he won't be as desperate. Even in prison, Bill wouldn't be able to get him to crack because Alan would communicate telepathically and probably drop in on the conversation, ruining Bill's whole pitch. So, could Bill Cipher take on Omni-Man? Maybe. He either already needs to have a physical form, or get very lucky in finding a vessel that could take on Viltrumites. Neither of which are an easy task. Though he might be able to sway Conquest into a deal, given the soldier's show exclusive confession about his severe loneliness. Bill offering him companionship and an outlet to reinvent himself without compromising his status on Viltrum. Of course, he'd just jack his body and take it for a joyride. Bill, of all people, having complete control over Conquest would probably yield the end of the universe as we know it, so hope that doesn't happen. This is probably where I start pissing people off because Rick and Morty is either a show you like or despise with great intensity. I just couldn't help but to throw the cynical asshat of a scientist in here because he's probably one of the only few human beings without explicit superpowers who could go toe to toe with a Viltrumite and live to tell the tale. This man has fought a god before and, well, I wouldn't say one, but the other guy's not alive anymore, so that's not nothing. Aside from his high intellect and absurd amount of protocols, he's pretty much Donald on steroids, with an absurd amount of cybernetic enhancements. Look at this. Bro's build is Doc Ock's dream, and Rick just casually patched it into his body. Not only does he have a suit that seems capable of taking any attack that's thrown at him, but he has this thing where he injects himself with a substance, shoots out a giant blobby version of himself, and then both of them have this orange force field around them that absorbs any kinetic energy from attacks, that then supercharges Rick and gives him a temporary boost in strength with that energy. We can't say for sure if this could tank a hit from a Viltrumite, but we have no reason to believe it wouldn't. And if Rick was able to clap someone's head off after getting whacked with some double-sided blades, I could only imagine that returning a blow from someone like Omni-Man or Conquest would knock them on their feet, if not flat out kill them if it's strong enough to pierce their skin. We also can't forget Rick's portal gun, a device that's used in combat plenty of times, and pretty much allows him to fight like Angstrom, which we know is a pretty disorienting experience for Mark, being thrown into any dimension at a moment's notice and having to anticipate any incoming attacks from a portal. Considering Rick and Morty has shown that portals can very easily function as death traps, lying into one carelessly might be a fatal mistake for the opposing Viltrumite. Rick tends to be pretty well researched and has traversed much of the galaxy, so odds are, Viltrum would already be on his radar, with Rick already privy to their biggest secrets. So he'd have the gadgets necessary to take them on in battle, if not develop them over the course of a confrontation. How so? Well, Rick has a protocol that's active in every single dimension within the central finite curve, potentially even beyond it. Operation Phoenix. Whenever Rick kicks the bucket, his mind is uploaded into a brand new body, even if that means being reborn in another dimension. So if he died fighting a Viltrumite, he would just keep coming back like a cockroach, no matter what they do. If they found and destroyed a stash of cloned bodies waiting in one dimension, it still wouldn't be long before he's thrown out of a portal gun, good as new and ready to brawl. And every instance where he's killed just gives him a couple of minutes to head back to the lab, create whatever he needs to level the playing field, and spring back into action. I think he'd even be able to create a virus capable of killing Viltrumites. Mentioning that for...
Have you been sick again?
No particular reason. Unfortunately for the haters, Rick is just too OP for a Viltrumite to permanently put him 6 feet under, especially when he's fighting with infinite lives. His endurance would simply outlast theirs, especially because so much of his endurance relies on his pettiness, which he has an endless supply of. He's like a mortal if he didn't suck. Samurai Jack is a cartoon that's been on my mind a lot lately. Really, ever since I talked about it in the Animation That Changed Channels video. Sadly, if you asked me if Jack had a shot at taking on a Viltrumite, the answer would be a swift no! He's skilled in many forms of combat and has picked up even more tricks during his time spent in the future. Yet, he's still just a human who often finds himself knocking on death's door when going against opponents who outclass him. He can't deal with the strength or speed of a Viltrumite. They'd kill him on the spot. He simply doesn't have a chance. Which leaves the other main character, the show's villain, Aku, the shape-shifting master of darkness. The literal embodiment of evil split off from a sinister black mass that the gods barely managed to destroy. Aku's effectively immortal. The only thing that can kill him are weapons forged by the deities, and the only known one in existence is Jack's sword, which is with Jack in the future. So already, Omni-Man wouldn't have any way of effectively harming Aku. Not that it even really matters, because Aku's stacked with incredible abilities that allowed him to conquer the world and rule it with an iron fist. It's already in his title, but the man can shapeshift, which is something he loves utilizing in combat. If he so desires, he can turn into a form that matches a Viltrumite's physique just for the mind games. Plus, he may be way easier to hit if he's humongous. Though it doesn't really matter, since no magic sword means no real damage has been dealt to him. He can multiply, he has eye beams, he can teleport, he can fling you through time, he can raise the dead, he can control the elements. Sorry, Avatar. He pretty much has Eve's matter manipulation ability, as he's shown to create something from nothing on numerous occasions. I think you get the idea. There's no limits to Aku's power, and much like Rick, he can do pretty much whatever the writers want him to do. I mean, he is capable of getting a cold, but not only did he bounce back, his sickness ended up being way more of a detriment to Jack than Aku himself. The samurai getting infected with Aku's evil and gradually getting taken over by that fragment of the ancient evil, kinda like a symbiote, which actually brings me to the ability that drove me to include Aku in this. I think it's obvious that he would curb stop Omni-Man and even Conquest without much of a struggle, but I believe even one Viltrumite going up against him would lead to a fate worse than death for what remains of their empire. Aku can infect, possess, and corrupt various forms of life. Even robots, imbuing them with his power and influence. Even if a Viltrumite can't measure up to Aku, they'd still be one of, if not the strongest alien race he's ever encountered. I believe that one encounter with a Viltrumite would result in Aku finding and possessing all of them, having a Viltrumite army under his wing to complete his conquest of the entire galaxy, retooling their mission to fit his image. Imagine how horrifying that would be for all the Viltrumites we've encountered to receive a massive boost in power that makes them impervious to any attack that isn't dealt with an enchanted blade. And they wouldn't retain any of their personalities. They'd just be cold, unfeeling weapons of mass destruction. This would induce a cosmic apocalypse. Everyone loses and everything suffers. Everything but the ultimate evil.
What we do here is go back.
Need something to throw on while you draw, study, or sleep? Roundtable Rewind's got you covered. So why not take a stroll down memory lane and subscribe?
No one can tell me what to do.
See you there. This is another show where the mirror inclusion will probably upset some people, but you just gotta hear me out. Steven Universe is probably the closest thing Cartoon Network has to a Saiyan. He can fly, he has super strength, super durability, super speed, enhanced agility, the ability to transform into a giant monster. All the dude is missing is Ki Blast. And with his mom being Pink Diamond, one of the most powerful gems in existence, he has a lot of unique abilities like healing, bringing the dead back to life, turning plants and even ordinary rocks into living beings capable of putting up a fight. He has a supersonic scream that's capable of permanently scarring gems, which his mom did on accident. He can create shields and barriers, which can be deadly. The list goes on. Not to mention, he's only getting stronger with age. He's also been in a similar position to where Mark was in the first 2 seasons, where he tries to hold back, but his emotions have gotten the better of him, and he ended up taking a life. For all of 2 seconds. Steven would be a pretty formidable warrior against a Viltrumite, but unfortunately for his fans in the audience, there's no shot he wins a fight against one. He has the same downfall as Aang, where despite his immense power, he doesn't fight with the intent to kill and wants to avoid such an outcome at all cost. Viltrumites carry the exact opposite sentiment in battle. They don't intend to leave their opponents alive, nor do they hold back, which already puts Steven at a disadvantage. Steven has to be pushed to the brink of insanity to reach the point point of murder. And I think he only got there with Jasper because she knew how to push his buttons and they have a checkered past. Getting jumped by Omni-Man or Conquest would definitely make him upset, but I think he's prioritizing defense before throwing lethal hands. On top of all of this, Steven still has a human anatomy, despite being half gem, meaning if he gets hit hard enough to be impelled through the chest, or any of the other brutal executions we've seen in Invincible, it's game over. They could also just rip out his gem if not shatter it immediately, as Steven cannot survive without it. Though if you unleash just his gem half, that is another can of worms and it honestly might turn the tides. I think Steven's clearly losing this fight, but I still wanted to throw him in there because he's one of the most powerful Cartoon Network characters in spite of his soft reputation. Now his mom, Pink Diamond, aka Rose Quartz, might be able to actually take on a Viltrumite or two. Not only does she have all of Steven's powers, but she has less qualms of getting her hands dirty if it means protecting human life. Plus, she has very poor impulse control. And since she's fully gem, if she gets poofed, she can just reform. Although there's a big chance that Viltrumite could shatter her gemstone before that happens. Though it's already hard to poof a diamond, they're insanely durable, and the only time Pink was poofed was when she staged her death with a special blade that was designed to cut through any gem's physical form. I don't know. Give Pink some time to process what's going on, should she ever be attacked by Viltrumite, and I think she has a fair shot at packing them up with her supersonic screams and other absurd powers. Over the past few years, there have been a lot of power scaling debates with WordGirl and Omni-Man on TikTok, and I want in. There's a whole video about WordGirl's raw power and how she's a tortured soul trapped in a kid's cartoon by Noah Bolter, but to keep it simple, she's another take on Superman with a lot of the powers you would expect. Powers that Viltrumites also have. Super strength, super speed, super durable, you get the idea. Although she does have her advantages. Whereas Viltrumites can just hold their breath for up to 2 weeks at a time and apparently can't breathe in space, WordGirl can breathe in space and underwater just fine. She has supersonic screams, which means she can be deadly to Viltrumites, and she arguably might be faster than Nolan, as Nolan wasn't naturally faster than the resident speedster Red Rush and had to anticipate his next move to catch him. You can even rationalize that she's more durable, as she's never had blood drawn before. And I know, it's a kid's show, but hey, nearly all of the characters in this video have blood on screen before, so I'm not letting that get in the way of my argument. She has tanked a lot of crazy shit without there being so much as a single scratch on her. A Viltrumite would have a hard time dealing with her. I also think her expansive vocabulary is nothing to sneeze at. If she starts throwing out a bunch of big words in rapid succession, maybe even mix it up with some other languages here and there, I think Omni-Man would get very confused and want to learn the meaning of those words as an author himself. Maybe he wants to use a couple in his next book. This educational moment leaving him wide open for a knuckle sandwich. Checkmate, power scalers. Her most impressive feat is also the one that ensures her victory, her ability to break the fourth wall. Becky is completely aware that she's a fictional character in a cartoon on PBS. She interacts with the narrator on numerous occasions. She's gone off script, which means she's able to defy the goddamn intent of the universe. And she's even skipped ahead to the next scene by force. So would she be aware that Nolan, or whichever Viltrumite she's fighting, is an animated character adapted from a comic book? She could probably inquire any necessary information from the narrator. I'm sure he's an Invincible fan. It's a popular series. If she's losing a fight, what's stopping her from rewinding to a previous scene and having a do-over? Nothing's stopping her, because like most meta characters, she's an agent of chaos who chooses to play by our silly rules. Really though, she's a character who will always find a way to win because the writers want her to win. She could fight honorably and struggle to hold her own against Nolan, as I definitely think he's stronger, given that he's older and has more combat experience, but her sonic scream is going to go a long way in knocking him down a peg and setting the stage for his downfall. Or she could just start dipping into the Toon Force and find a way to win with fourth wall shenanigans. Maybe she'll wait it out until the animation takes a dip in quality and strike when Nolan's at his most vulnerable. When he's busting a move.
Let me break it down for you, Mark.
Regardless, I'm giving WordGirl the win. The Grim Reaper, the embodiment of death itself, who just happens to have a Jamaican accent, but he's not Jamaican. I wanted to include the grim adventure of Billy and Mandy's take on the Reaper, not only because it's one of my favorite cartoons of all time, but because this Grim is absurdly powerful. When he has his scythe. Size alteration, possession, pyrokinesis, telekinesis, magic spells. He even has the ability to extend someone's life with an hourglass prior to their designated expiration, which makes me wonder if he can do the opposite, delivering instant death to anyone who mildly gets on his nerves. The scythe is the source of most of his power, however. It can cut through anything and leave permanent damage, as evident with Jack-o'-lantern, who was beheaded by the scythe and resorted to using a pumpkin as his new head. So Grimm may need to slice through a Viltrumite only once to end the battle. It can open portals to the underworld and all across the multiverse. It can be used as a lightsaber, and it can even operate as a vehicle. Now, it sounds like Grimm could be a force to be reckoned with, yet there's something I neglected to mention. He's kind of a joke. The entire premise of the series is that Grimm becomes a servant and best friend to Billy and Mandy after losing a game of Limbo. And as the series progresses, Grimm becomes everyone's punching bag. It's extremely easy to steal his scythe from him. Plenty of characters have done it, even the cat. Getting disrespected is just part of this man's daily routine. Grimm's not gonna last long against the likes of Omni-Man or Conquest, because they would just yoink his scythe right out of his hands, pop off his skull, and leave it in a ditch somewhere while they take control of Earth. Grimm loses because he's just kinda checked out and pathetic. Honestly, I don't even think he would bother fighting anyone unless they destroy Billy's TV or something, since that disrupts his life as a supernatural couch potato. Could he beat them if he locked in? Meh, still think he's getting mowed down pretty easily. People love mashing up regular show with Invincible, so you already know I had to include Mordecai and Rigby. I'll make it quick. Clearly, Mordecai and Rigby on their own are going to get cooked. They've literally died before, but they also have access to a crazy amount of supernatural resources that can even the playing field, from the power to death punchies. They could definitely beat a Viltrumite, but it'd be because one would pull up to control Earth, Benson would go, "Get rid of that Viltrumite before Maylord shows up or you're fired!" Then the boys would consult Skips, who would say, "I've seen this before." And then they stumble their way through a battle where the Viltrumite winds up dead or sealed away at the end. And if they can't save the day, Pop's at full power can. He's practically a god. Fighting his evil brother literally reset the universe countless times. Light work, no reaction. Okay, KO Let's Be Heroes is another criminally underrated Cartoon Network show with an underrated protagonist. KO may be 6 to 11 years old, but he's also the most powerful hero in Lakewood Plaza. Long story short, KO's a shonen protagonist. He's remarkably strong, agile, and durable for a kid his age. He can shoot energy blasts from his fist, and when he transforms into TKO, the manifestation of his negative emotions, he's able to tap into his full capabilities, and even fly. There's also PKO, where the two sides of KO work in tandem to kick ass and take names. He also has a bit of Toon Force on his side thanks to Glorbs, balls of energy that gives the cartoony, larger-than-life qualities to his world and the people that inhabit it, which I think will shield him from being turned into a pile of mush after Omni-Man decks him right in the face. KO would definitely give Omni-Man a great fight, especially if TKO came out to play, assuming this confrontation is prior to the end of the series. What really gives KO the edge and worthy of an inclusion here is the power that he inherited from his father, energy absorption, draining power from opponents to fuel his own attacks. However, with TKO, this power appears to be lethal, as he absorbed energy from the almighty Glorb tree underneath the plaza, and proceeded to reduce everyone in the plaza to literal dust. KO mercilessly slaughtered all of his friends while going on a rampage. But they're okay now. Still, this puts KO in a similar position to Rick, where he can absorb energy from a Viltrumite and deliver a devastating blow in return. Not to mention, if he drains their energy, they'll be left in a weakened state that leaves them vulnerable to a finishing attack. However, I can't comfortably hand KO the win because 1, the timeline very much matters. If he's a kid, he's obviously going to be weaker, and since that's the version of the character people are familiar with, and where KO and TKO are treated as two separate entities, I'm gonna go with him. And 2, he's kind of a klutz. It wouldn't take much for him to make a miscalculation and end up humiliated. It really depends on the scenario. So, can KO be Omni-Man? Maybe. He's definitely capable, but I think he has to rely on being underestimated and a buttload of other things going his way during the fight. Worst case scenario, he's walking out alive, just in pieces, but alive nonetheless. We've discussed some pretty powerful characters today, most of whom hail from Cartoon Network, and while that wasn't really intentional, I think it was a subconscious decision to highlight our final fighter today. You see, amongst all the characters created by the various visionaries who worked at Cartoon Network Studios, lies a god amongst gods. Someone who surpasses some of the greatest warriors in fiction, rubbing shoulders with those thought to be untouchable. He may be human, but he is no mere mortal. He can enter any universe on a whim and bend the rules of reality. You know his name, but you're afraid to say it, so allow me to bear the burden. Uncle Larry Grandpa. The man who is everyone in the world's uncle and grandpa at the same time, dedicating his life to helping children who have no clue who this weird old man is, granting any request with his reality warping abilities. Seriously, it feels like there's no limit to what this man can do. If you watch even a single episode of Uncle Grandpa, you'll quickly come to understand that he's not just someone who has access to the Toon Force, he is the Toon Force. We would be here for another hour if I listed all of his insane feats. Seriously, no wiki online has done this man justice. Just to give you a taste of his power, he can duplicate himself, he can pop off parts of his body at any moment, like his head, which can fly around and produce even more limbs. He can shapeshift with his body, changing not only his form, like when he turned into a dog on a whim, but when he molded his gut into a mallet and giant hand, giving Luffy a run for his money. He can send someone into a shirt, he can travel at supersonic speeds, he can access the multiverse, not only traveling to other worlds, but bringing characters who exist in separate realities into his own, as evident with the Grand Prix Awards. He can even interact with characters in different shows through on-air television graphics. He has super strength, being able to rip off his own skin. He's insanely durable, taking various attacks, including having nuclear waste dumped on him without being phased. He can escape any situation by exploiting a plot hole. He can turn people older. He can turn people into boulders. Even his belly bag is its own cosmic can of worms. Realistically, Uncle Grandpa would get thrown around like a rag doll for a little bit, but considering he's going to bounce back no matter what, immediately walking back on screen like nothing happened if he got brutally maimed by Omni-Man, it'd only be a matter of time before Nolan lost his sanity and succumbed to Uncle Grandpa's aura. Uncle G will literally have the last laugh and find a way to best his opponent, finishing them off by honking his nose, summoning all of his energy, and saying good night before erasing them out of existence, or at least giving them a real bad tummy ache. Now, I'm sure Uncle Grandpa Solo's your favorite character is an easy meme people go for in the world of power scaling, since he is an extremely goofy character. But given how dark and serious Invincible can get, I actually think Viltrumites make for some pretty great opponents because of the juxtaposition. We've already seen how characters in a show that takes itself a bit more seriously react to Uncle Grandpa with the infamous Say Uncle crossover episode of Steven Universe. The Crystal Gems were horrified and helpless as their heads rotated around the earth during exposition about Uncle Grandpa's deal and concluded that he must be a reality warping entity. Are you telling me this exact same situation with Nolan, Alan, and Mark wouldn't be hysterical? I want to see that! Long-term exposure to Uncle Grandpa also gave the gems awareness of the fourth wall, so I'd love to see the same thing happen here, as I imagine it'd probably break Nolan's brain. Homie's already going through an identity crisis. Finding out he's an animated comic book character might cause him to resign any and all will to live. Uncle Grandpa actually has a reason to fight a Viltrumite too, as they're always threatening Earth, and thus the kids that reside on the planet. Those kids need his help, wanting the planet to be safe. And they know they're only gonna get so far with the bum-ass Guardians of the Globe. Uncle Grandpa would take on the Viltrum Empire and not only win, but manage to rehabilitate them, as they realize he's also their uncle and grandpa. How?
That would be telling.
Look, I told you on the beginning to not think too hard about it, and that's my job. But I do think we're gonna call it a wrap here. And with all this said, I do want to know what you guys think. How wrong am I about some of these choices? Or do you agree with most of them? What other cartoon characters should I pit against Viltrumites? If this video does well, maybe I'll do a sequel. Let's get a dialogue going in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. It really means a lot. Thank you to Janky Bones for another great thumbnail. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.